Good afternoon, students. I am Miss Tende Kandando, and I am the tutor for Social Science 1. I'm just here to briefly give you what is expected of you by the time you have to sit for your exams for this module. Now, what I'm going to do right now is I'll just go through all 3 examinations, what you should know to be able to pass either 3 of the examinations, all of them, yeah, whatever paper you're going to sit for. I'm not going to outline and say this is expected in the first exam or this is expected in the second exam, but I'll just give you a thorough brief view of what you are expected to know if you're going to sit for Social Science 1, whether it is the first, the second, or the third exam. My email address is there on, as you can see it, it's rishatk@gmail.com. My cell phone number is 08161555100. So if you have any questions or queries, you can contact me on either both of them, preferably by email, and I can call you, and always put your number, please, so that I can call you back. All right. Content that you should master. The importance of social studies in the curriculum. The importance of social studies in the curriculum. Why is it important that schools have social studies? You need to know that as future teachers. You need to know the relevance of social studies as future social study teachers. You need to be able to communicate that to every person, to anyone, to a learner, or to just anybody randomly. Now here I need you to pay attention to the basic competencies. Social studies is not only about map scales and map scales, especially in map work and all that. So don't only focus on it teaches learners how to read the map and all that. I prefer you to be detailed enough to give the broad view of what social studies is all about. Social studies focuses on it has the social, the technical, and the historical aspect. So I would want for students to please you must connect all these 3 aspects together if you are giving your answers. When you're giving the relevance of social studies in the curriculum. And refrain from merely mentioning basic competencies. Make it relevant to someone's life. Make it explainable. Okay? So explain it clearly so that someone understands the importance or the relevance of social studies in the curriculum. Methods of teaching social studies. Methods of teaching social studies. It is very important that as future social study teachers, we know how we can break down the content to our learners. Now, it is very important that we know how to break down the content to our learners. So, what are the various methods can one use to teach social studies? So, if you should know these methods, you should be able to name the method, describe and explain it, how you are going to use a specific method to teach social studies. Types of continuous assessment task. The types of continuous assessment task. Knowing how to teach is not the end in education. You also need to know how to assess what you have taught. So it is very important that you the students, know how to assess the learners. Once you are done with your studies, and you have obtained your diplomas, your qualification, how will you assess the learners? How will you assess them? So you need to know them. You need to know the different types of continuous assessment. Yeah? The topic task, the tests, the topic, the examinations, the projects. You need to know what it is and know how different it is from one another, because you never know how the question will come. Maybe the question will be, how do projects differ from a practical exercise, for example? So you should know the difference between this, not just know them by knowing their names, as in we have a practical exercise, we have topic tests, we have projects, but you also need to know how do they differ, all right, so that you know exactly when you are trying to assess what and which assessment do you need to use. Okay. It is important to know the major rivers in Namibia and where they are found. It is very, very important. If you do not know, for example, where a specific river is located, you're going to have a difficult time answering this question. So it is important to know not just the name of the river, but know where it is found, because the question might come that you need to probably indicate the river on a specific map that is provided. So you need to know where this river goes. All right. So where is it found in the country? The Orange River is found in the south. It borders Namibia and South Africa. Whereas the Kavango River is found where? Zambezi River is found where? All right. So it is important to know the rivers, know all of them, the major ones, yeah, all of them, and know where they are found, because you don't know whether you are going to be asked to list them or you are going to be asked to indicate them on a map. So you just need to know everything around the major rivers in Namibia. Determining direction and scale calculations. You need to know how to determine direction. You need to know how to be able to teach a learner how to determine direction. You also need to know how to determine it yourself, because the question might ask you to draw up a lesson plan or a lesson preparation on how you're going to teach learners how to determine direction. Or the question might come that there are questions for you to answer and you have to be the one to determine direction, for example. So you should know everything around determining direction and also scales calculations. You don't know whether you're going to be asked to know how to determine to identify the different types of scales, or how to convert from one scale to another, or you are going to be asked to teach it in a lesson plan, for example. So you just need to know everything around it. Population distribution across Namibia. Population distribution across Namibia. Where in Namibia do we find the most people? In other words, which parts of the country are densely populated? Which parts of the country are sparsely populated? And also link the reasons. Yeah? They are physical, they are social, economical, and all these other factors that lead to the way the population is distributed across the country. So it is very important that you know everything around it. Don't just know what is population distribution and that most of the people are found in the northern part of the country and so forth. You should tell us, you should be able to explain yourself why most people, because the country, I can ask, the question could come that most people are found in the northern part of the country. Why is that the case? You understand? So you have to be able to say everything around population distribution in Namibia. So it is very important that you know everything around it. Government branches and functions. The other important point that you need to know is the government branches and their functions. The different branches of the government and their functions. It is very, very important Do not just know the branches in general. What are their functions, their individual functions? Why are they there? Why are those branches of government there? It is important that you are able to explain that. The role played by women in the liberation struggle of Namibia. So we are moving to the historical part of social study, the historical aspect of social studies. What was the role played by women in the liberation struggle of Namibia? It is important that you know the significant roles that were played by women in the history of the country. You should be able to discuss it. You should be able to explain it in thorough details. Also, what is important for the students is that you need to pay attention to the verb. What is the question asking? If you are asked to explain, please explain and do not describe. And if you are asked to describe, do not explain, describe. And if you are asked to list, do not explain, just list. And if you are asked to write an essay, for example, then follow the essay format. You know, the essays have the introduction and then it's the body part. And so the body part, don't just write a whole full big paragraph. Divide the bodies, each with a topic sentence, and then points that are supporting the topic sentence and the concluding sentence, and then you move to a next point like that. It's very, very important in academics that you are able to follow the instruction of the verb. What is the question asking? It's very, very important. Then another important point there is HIV and AIDS. What are the myths and facts of around HIV and AIDS? What are the myths and what are the facts? What are the things that people just say about HIV and AIDS that are not true, and what are the things that are truthful about HIV and AIDS? Around here, you should know. The question can come in that maybe you should organize a role play whereby your learners will be playing. Maybe one group is playing about the myths and the other one is acting out about the facts, and at the end of the day you should show that conclusion that you have taught them that this is the myths and this is the facts. It is very important. Another important point that you need to master for these exams is human rights, democracy, and globalization. Those are three very big words: human rights, democracy, and globalization. You need to know what human rights are. You need to know what they are. Human rights. What are human rights? Why are they important? Why are they there? Democracy. What does it mean? What does it mean? Democracy, the term, what does it mean? And globalization. What does the term globalization mean? Lesson plans, objectives, basic competencies. You need to know. You could be asked to somehow maybe come up with your own format of a lesson plan, and the important things that are supposed to be stipulated in a lesson plan. For example, the objectives, the basic competencies, the task of the teacher, the task of the learners, and so forth. You also need to know what lesson plans are. You need to know what lesson objectives and basic competencies are. Their definition and the differences between, especially lesson objectives, and basic competencies. Types of questions and their examples. There are various types of questions, so you need to be able to know the types of questions and also be able to come up with these questions when you are asked in the exams. Short questions, long questions, and if you are asked to give an example of each. And preferably these questions should be relevant to social studies, not just random questions like this is a short question and or so forth. It should be a question that is relevant to social studies curriculum. The importance of map work, that would be another point. Another point that you should master. It's importance of map work. What is the importance of map work in social studies curriculum? Why do we teach learners the importance? Why do we teach learners map work? And make it really relevant. Make it relevant. Refrain from just using points without being able to support the points. You might be asked to explain the importance, so you should be able to explain and elaborate and not just list the importance of map work. Another important point would be factors contributing to and the impacts of overpopulation on the environment. So you need to look at the factors contributing to overpopulation. What are the factors that are contributing to or that are leading to overpopulation? First of all, you need to know what overpopulation is. And then you can look at the factors that are contributing to overpopulation. And then the impacts thereof that overpopulation has on the natural environment. It is very, very important you know what overpopulation is. Overpopulation cannot be a lot of people in an area. That cannot be an explanation of what overpopulation is. Because even if there is a lot of people in that area, but the natural resources are able to sustain those people, then that area is not overpopulated. Overpopulation is when an area has so many people to the extent that the natural resources are unable to sustain those people, then that area is overpopulated. Now, what are the factors that are contributing to overpopulation? And what are the impacts that this overpopulation has on the environment? So it is very important that you read everything around this overpopulation. You could be asked to write an essay about it. You could be asked to just discuss it or to list whatsoever. Yeah, population pyramids and physical features in Namibia. It is important to be able to read population pyramids. You could be given population pyramids and could be asked to read which age group is more, and when you're looking at this specific pyramid, can you tell whether this country has a high or low life expectancy and the dependency ratio, and you should be able to explain why the pyramids are the way they are, for example. And the physical features in Namibia. Physical features now here for, it goes hand in hand with the major rivers, for example. Those are physical features of a country, in a country. The mountains, the great escarpment, the deserts, you understand, all these kind of, those are all physical features in Namibia. So it is very important that you know this. broadly, all the physical features, because this can be anything. Then we have the types of sources. Another important point that you need to master is the types of sources. We know we have the primary, the secondary sources. You need to not just know the primary and secondary sources, we also need to know how to define them. And when you are asked to define, it's okay to just, primary sources is this and this, and secondary sources is this and this, but you should know how to differentiate between a primary source and a secondary source. And when you are asked to distinct between the two, use a verb that is showing that you are differentiating between the two. You are not just defining them, because defining and differentiating is two different terminologies. So again, pay attention to the verb. What are you being asked to do? Are you being asked to define, or are you being asked to differentiate? So if you are being asked to differentiate, and when you're differentiating, you use terms like, for example, if I say it's a girl and a boy, differentiate between the two. So you say girls have breasts and boys do not have breasts, or you say girls have breasts while boys do not have breasts. While, that is a word that you are using showing that there is a difference between the two. You are differentiating. But if you say a girl is a girl and a boy is a boy, then you are not differentiating. You are just stating things. You understand? So try to differentiate, please. Modern communication. What is modern communication? How has communication changed from back then, from years back and now? We have modern communication. People communicate via Skype, via all these technologies and all these things now. And what is, so focus on what, not, I don't necessarily mean for you to compare between the old methods of communication and the now methods of communication per se, but modern communication, what is it? What is modern communication? And what are the pros and cons of modern communication? What are the pros and cons? That means what are the good things that comes with modern communication, and what are the bad things that come with modern communication? So that is something to pay very much attention to. When I say pros and cons, or the good and the bad, you might feel like there is nothing bad about modern communication. It has made it easier. We can now walk around with our cell phones and whatnot. But don't you feel like the modern communication has cut physical contact with people? Now you would rather call someone instead of visiting them. You'd rather call them and just talk to them from your house, and they're in their house, and somehow this physical contact and connection between people has been totally cut off per se. So you need to be able to write about modern communication, and you need to be able to write about the advantages or the good things that comes from modern communication, and you should also be able to write about the disadvantages that comes with modern communication as well. Okay. All right. Yeah.